Dr. Tamielle Brunt, she did her PhD in New South Wales, and she did a lot of that, like delving into the deep history of platypus and looking into just historical, even news records and how people described platypus populations like prolific and like seeing like over 15 to 20 platypuses in, the Yarra River in Melbourne. Today it's not a species we would describe as prolific.
No.
You're lucky to see maybe 2 platypuses, 3 platypuses at a time on the surface.
Wow.
I've seen that at Yungala National Park. It's not something how we would describe them. So historically they were prolific, but they did get then hunted before they were protected back in 1902. And I pushed myself out of my boundaries because I'm like, you know what? Because as I just said, I'm always talking to people that are already converted. How do I get beyond those people?
Yeah.
500 random people from a TEDx talk. And unfortunately, with the research that I have done because of pursuing honours and PhD, we have lost platypus in the last 20 years around Brisbane. And that's just a blip in terms of a species. And
is it a large amount, or it's gradual? It's noticeable, but not in the grand scheme of things, or? Well,
it's definitely noticeable. But again, because we hadn't been monitoring them
historically,
and really rigorously, and building up that data, they really just disappeared right under our noses. A lot of information and a lot of despair. Eco-anxiety is a big thing. Climate crisis, like all of that, people get really overwhelmed. But just literally breaking it down and reminding people we have got some incredible things that live right in our backyard, and channeling the cute aggression towards those things to take action.
And what is cute aggression? Welcome to Working with Wildlife, where I, your host, Jaden Lunt, speak to experts and enthusiasts in different fields of nature to find out how and why they do what they do. In today's episode, we cover a range of different topics, such as the importance of sharing the value of conservation to the general public. How does donating your time through volunteer work help you in your direction of working with wildlife? And what is cute aggression? Well, we find out the answers to these questions and a lot of other questions as well through today's guest, who has completed a Bachelor of Applied Science, presently is a project manager at Wildlife Queensland, and also helps implement Platy count events across Queensland. There's a range of other different things as well as helping out with scientific research and the likes. So, without further ado, let's get into the show, and please welcome to the show, Tamielle Brunt. Tamielle, thank you very much for coming onto the show. I'm super excited to hear more about your story, what you do, talking about platypus eventually. We've had a pretty interesting conversation really as it is so far. Some of the stuff I wish we recorded anyway, talking about the impact of social media and that sort of thing, which is a very fascinating topic. But I don't know about you, but we're talking about the weather before, and it made me think. For me, I think Brisbane weather is a bit bipolar. I don't know if you're experiencing that or if it's just me, but for the past year and a half, it's been really all over the shop. And there's a snake catcher. You think it's a good day, and it's completely not. Am I the only one who's thinking this, or also?
It's definitely been a lot more stifling, I've noticed, for longer. And regardless of any field work you're doing, I hate wearing pants. I don't want to be out and wearing pants on those stifling days.
No, it's so muggy.
Yeah. So I love most of my field work at the moment with the environmental DNA sampling is during winter. So it's beautiful. It's cooler,
yes,
which is perfect. But sometimes it's outside of those periods and I'm just like, oh, do I have to put pants on?
Is there a specific, because summer around here, I hear you. When it's a sweating hot day. I have a Jimny. You saw the Jimny out front. Love those cars.
Yeah.
it doesn't have enough power to get up hills with the aircon on.
Oh.
And so often I would just like not have the aircon on and just have the window down, but it just gets so hot.
Yep.
It was frustrating. Now I've got the RAV4. It's got aircon. It can go up hills with the aircon on. It's amazing stuff.
Yep.
Now I do want to get into it eventually, of course, like your story and the platypus that you find so interesting. Platypi is singular.
Platypus.
Platypus.
And platypuses.
Platypuses. Okay, I've always wondered that. Fantastic. Now I know. What I was getting to is that with clothing, what sort of material is kind of better for field work, like cotton, a mix of cotton and something else? Do you know at all? Have you got a favorite?
Well, yeah, certainly light cotton shirts. You want the breathable kind of, breathable. Definitely for those hot days, for sure. But as you can imagine, when you're traipsing through the bush, you need thicker pants because especially traipsing through lantana and God knows what else, you will get ripped to shreds. So you need long sleeves, long pants, all that kind of stuff.
Is there a brand that you've kind of figured being better than some?
Not really.
No.
I kind of op shop.
Yeah,
see if I can find some thick pants via op shopping. Sometimes I don't. I've gone and I have bought some like Bisley pants and stuff. And we do obviously have work shirts specifically for us at Wildlife Queensland as well as Oxley Creek catchment. So that's nice. But, you just need to cover up because you'll get ripped to shreds if you're traipsing through the bush. When I'm trapping in the water, though, that's pretty like you've got leggings and pretty loose clothing on because you've got waders on. So you want to be pretty comfortable in waders. And again, depending on the temperature, if it's hot, you're pretty much in a sauna.
Straight
and it's gross.
up. I was in waders just yesterday. I'm right there with you right now. I was in waders all like 6 hours trying to catch these fish in hills.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't the worst experience, but still, I know what you're saying.
You just want to sit in cold water when it's hot.
Oh my gosh, yes.
It gets so stifling. But then in winter, it's freezing. It's freezing cold water.
It's not ideal. Yeah. There was the release point yesterday was close enough. I had to walk there through the site and amazing, like really large dam. I was just standing in the water cleaning my stuff off, releasing the fish and the eels and the turtles. And I was like, wow, this is really nice. This is really nice. I like this water. Yeah. If I was working there and it wasn't illegal, I'd probably swim there.
Yeah.
After a hot day, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, platypus. Before we get into everything else, for those who may not know what a platypus is, it's a weird combination of a lot of different things, is what I hear. Could you give us a bit of an introduction to the platypus biology?
Yes. So they're probably one of the most quirkiest and well-known creatures globally, I think. Like so many international people are so just fascinated by platypus, but also just Australian wildlife in general because we're so lucky to have a lot of quirky things. But the platypus is, back when the first naturalists came to Australia and were discovering obviously our species, they thought this thing was, what was this? Obviously our Indigenous people knew them. They would hunt them for their pelts and I think some food in some areas. So they were well obviously known to them and everything, but certainly for the first Europeans, they thought, what is this thing? It's this duck-bill, beaver-tailed, web-footed, just this random combination of bird, mammal, and reptile fish thing. It just very strange.
And they even thought it was so sewn together. It was complete. They was trying to find stitching in it.
Yes. So back, obviously, then there were people that would try and pass off different species by making their own species. And so if you look it up, Google it, a mermaid was a monkey torso and a fish body.
Okay, so that's what they can. Right. Okay. Right.
And so they would then stitch. Yeah,
it's so strange.
Look it up. It's very odd.
It's wacky.
And so obviously, they thought surely this bill is shoved on some kind of mammal and these webbed feet is from, something else. And then, this tail and all that kind of stuff. But they obviously didn't find any stitching in the platypus.
No, because it's real.
Yeah.
Yeah, it exists.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and real, it's a real thing. So that was 18, when did you say?
That was 1879.
1879, where they first was kind of found.
Taken over to England.
Right.
And when George Shaw was the one to describe it. So back then they were describing species and then putting it through, the first journals to be able to say these are the new species from these areas that they were going to. And so then it took them over 85 years to then confirm that it's a mammal that actually lays eggs.
Right,
and
over 35 years, right.
80,
okay.
Yeah, 85
85.
85
it's a bit
years.
more than 30. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So, so that's another quirky thing for the platypus is that it's an egg-laying mammal.
Right.
And obviously the other one is being our echidnas, so the
and
short-beaked
then combined
echidna.
monotremes?
Monotremes, yes.
Yep.
And so, they're these egg-laying mammals. The females don't have nipples like normal mammals. They just exude kind of milk from their abdomen to feed their young.
Yeah, and they kind of lap it up. The young lap it up.
Yeah, and then the males have these incredible venomous spurs on their hind ankles.
Yes.
For defense during breeding season, as well as obviously potentially against predators and stuff like that as well.
I heard along the lines maybe something to do with mating. That's just a theory that hasn't been proven yet.
It's probably for fighting, so territorial males
Makes
when breeding.
sense.
Yeah, when breeding season comes on, because the venom itself actually comes on during breeding season. It's not
full year round.
All year round.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, right. So in breeding season defense. Okay, and have you been stung yourself yet?
No.
Yeah, we'll say have you been stung? No. And do you know anyone that has been stung, or do you know like what's like, can that be like attributed to pain wise?
Yeah, so there's certainly stories that people have been spurred by a male, and it really is the fact that people just have found a platypus on the side of a waterway or something and think it's in distress, and not knowing that these males have these venomous spurs and just pick them up and cradle them in their hands instead of picking them up by the tail just in case it is a male. Yep. So the males then will go and obviously, freak out and spur you as defense. And so there has been a couple of people that have been spurred, and apparently the pain is excruciating, and no amount of morphine will help you for quite some time. It will impact the nerves and the muscle and tissues, and I haven't gone into the deep venom
extract of it.
Yeah, but it's a combination of different venoms that that's combined in there. So it really does impact. And then one gentleman who got spurred said 5 years after, his hand still was quite stiff and sore from that area. So
interesting.
So yeah,
and he wasn't like 85 years old or something. It's not arthritis. Okay, sweet.
No. So really interesting, but it is very rare. Obviously, a lot of ecologists that work with platypus, we know how to handle them. It's definitely not what we want to get is to be spurred. So we certainly make sure that we're doing everything right when we are handling them.
Yes, of course. How about the environment that they're in? What sort of environment would you expect to see a platypus in? I know that there's we're potentially going to have this conversation at one of those locations. Would have been cool to do so. There is one spot in Collingwood Park, I believe, that a platypus has been sighted. I don't know how recent the most recent sighting is, whether or not it's still there.
Yep.
But I know I've heard of it. When looking, all I found was mosquitoes, and the mosquitoes found me.
Yes.
But what sort of environment would they find be found in?
If anything, thank goodness, platypus are pretty well adapted to a lot of different environments. Obviously, the perfect environment for them is a freshwater ecosystem. You've got flowing, connected waters. You've got those pools and riffles, pools with a depth of up to 5 meters. Just because foraging for them, anything deeper is just not effective for them because they don't hold their breath as they're foraging. So they cycle about every 60 seconds or so when they're foraging. So anything deeper, it's just not efficient for them to obviously get food and everything. So deep pools, riffles, you've got high stable banks that are vegetated, hopefully by native vegetation, but unfortunately in these human modified landscapes, we have a lot of invasive vegetation as well. But high stable banks, because they burrow into the banks. They can have camp burrows, which are about 1 meter. The females can burrow for their nesting sites up to 30 meters.
It was 30 meters. It's pretty. Yeah, it's pretty hectic.
It's pretty incredible.
That's proper. Like I tried digging into China one time. Yeah. No word of a lie. I actually, as a kid, I thought I was able to make.
What child doesn't think? you're going to dig yourself to China in a sandpit.
I got like 1.5 meters deep, if that.
Yep.
It's too much. 30 meters.
Yeah.
Wow.
30 meters. And so, they get in and they make these amazing little den sites to, she'll house her young. It's like a little humidity crib. She'll line it with like the wet debris from the waterway. So those stable banks are really important, and the buffer zone of our native vegetation along the waterways is really important. That canopy cover, that overhanging vegetation, that can be for protection, as well as obviously the temperature of the water, which then also impacts what they eat, which is their macroinvertebrates. So dragonfly larvae, caddisfly larvae, worms, mollusks, shrimps, things like that. So, all of these things impact their food source and where they are. And so we do see them from urban environments. So, here locally, Woogaroo Creek, Opossum Creek, but those, it's pretty heavily degraded in some of those areas. The turbidity is just bonkers.
Quick question. What is turbidity?
Turbidity is a lot of the sediment runoff from erosion a lot of the time. So it's that soil that it makes the water really murky, and that sediment of that soil can then drop to the bottom and smother their food source.
Right.
So that's obviously not a good thing. If there's no food, platypus aren't going to hang around for very long. So it impacts that water quality, which will impact their food source and then ultimately impact them.
Impacts them, right.
Yeah.
I had a question with the dens and the burrows. A fella came down. How is it designed? How is it generally designed, their burrows?
Well, that's the thing. As you can imagine, platypus being so elusive, and even now we're still learning so much about them and their construction of burrows and things. And so back in the day when, early naturalists like David Flay, he was, they were the ones going out and finding these burrow sites and working out, how these burrows were constructed. But even then, we haven't really done anything beyond that. We have a lot of research happening in captive breeding. So Hillsville Sanctuary, they do incredible work with the breeding and how females will construct their dens and things in captivity.
Okay, where is Hillsbury?
Hillsville is in Victoria. Right. So kind of the eastern part of Melbourne, beautiful area, beautiful sanctuary.
Okay.
And so they breed platypuses there. They've been successful breeding them. And there has been research into their dens and everything.
Yeah, okay. But little is known so far.
But in the wild, to find burrow sites, you'd have to track them using acoustic tracking or some form of other GPS tracking to find their burrow sites. And I don't think in this day and age we would probably get ethics to dig up den sites.
For sure would be a challenge.
That kind of stuff. Whereas, again, back in the day when we were early learning about these animals, they got away with a lot.
For sure.
So
a little jealous, to be honest, with some of them. A little jealous.
And so obviously we're not going out and digging up those kind of sites, especially in the wild.
Of course.
One, it's hard to find them, and two, the ethics behind that as well. So we certainly rely heavily on those captive sanctuary kind of understanding of what the females do for their den sites.
Okay. And would you say, generally speaking, would you say that the burrows, do you know if the burrows are, I thought he was being silly. Do you know if the burrows often start underneath the water or above the water? Usually underneath? Yeah.
So as a protection, concealing the entrance of the burrow is really important. So usually under the water line, and then they go up the slope.
Yes.
But there has been, especially in Tassie, at Lake Lee, the burrow entrance can be above the water line, and actually they'll walk up and into it. So they have reduced predation in Tassie as well, so they are more likely to be walking over land and stuff there as well.
Right.
So it's obviously not an issue, whereas here on the mainland we do have obviously a lot of invasive predators and a lot of challenges. So walking over land is definitely
not ideal.
Yeah, not great for
them. Not ideal if you're a platypus.
Yeah.
Yeah. I to my understanding, there is also a disease of some kind that is only in Tasmania. What's that called?
The mucors disease.
Yeah,
it's
and that's still just in Tasmania so far?
As far as we know. But we do sometimes have some funky things come up on platypuses. But again, it's really hard to capture those individuals. even the ones I capture, I was lucky they didn't seem to have any issues. But we get a lot of calls from the general public, and they're like, oh, I've seen this platypus and it's got this lump on its bill or it's got this weird looking colouring or something like that. But to go out and try and capture that specific animal is
challenging.
Like a needle in a haystack. It's
fair.
Challenging in just capturing platypuses in general for a population study, let alone trying to capture, a single one to make sure that it doesn't have mucors. But our frogs, obviously it's from a frog species.
Okay.
It's a fungal thing that impacts frogs.
It is obvious now that I know that.
Yeah. So, and obviously I'm not following it, I guess, to know if there's issues of it within Queensland as such. But as far as we know, it's not on the mainland.
Sweet.
So.
Now, you're talking about a little bit of how capturing these platypuses. What's kind of the process that you go through when you are setting up for an expedition as such, like from planning to till completion? Could you get a bit of a rundown of what that is?
Yeah, so obviously we want to be in waterways where platypus are. So we go back to historical records, potentially where there's platypus. Most recently, we've been doing environmental DNA sampling, which has revolutionised the way we can monitor platypus.
Yeah.
So we take a water sample, we can find their DNA, the fact that they're swimming, they're pooing in the water. Obviously, that's mixing. So we can confirm that platypus are in these waterways. So once we know where they are, I kind of do a bit of a desktop kind of study first to kind of overlook the satellite imaging and try and find, areas along the waterway where there's potential access.
Okay.
Then you go out and you have to kind of recce those sites, making sure that it's safe for you to get to the water's edge, especially with your nets. And depending on the nets that you're going to use as well. So
what are some kind of the nets that?
Yeah, I was using Fyke nets. And so they are like a D-frame entrance with like a two baffled out the back and like a windsock. So you anchor the windsock to the bank and you have the D frame kind of smack bang in the middle of the waterway. And then it's got wings out the side. So then you anchor the wings to the bank. And so you're wanting to kind of funnel the platypuses into that windsock. So it's half in and half out of the water.
Yeah.
For obviously protection for the platypus and things, but obviously to not drown them.
Of course.
And then so we would have multiple sites that we'd be setting up throughout the afternoon, and we'd be most likely setting up 2 Fyke nets per site, so one facing upstream, one facing downstream. And then once we've got the site set up, we'd be going back every 2 to 3 hours to check them throughout the night. So you're doing an all-nighter. Trying to nap in between and checking for platypuses, releasing bycatch, and repairing nets because the cheeky Ricali would chew them.
Ricali's fish species?
Ricali is our beautiful native water rat. So the ones with the beautiful white tip tail and the golden bellies.
Right,
yes,
right.
But so I had only ever had a couple that had stayed in the nets. The rest chew themselves out and make a mess of my nets. So then I'd be going around trying to, stitch up these holes so platypus don't fall through and, escape and everything. So that they're very cheeky. But another beautiful species, again, highly underrated, being a rodent, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay.
And so then once we would go out and check, hopefully if we did catch a platypus, we would take it out of the net by its tail because obviously if it's a male,
don't get stabbed.
Yes.
Copy.
And then we put it into like a pillowcase and then we would process it. So we would weigh it, measure it, give it a bit of a body condition score because they hold a lot of fat in their tail.
Okay.
And so it's very scientific if you just like squeeze their tail and if it's quite rigid and fat, obviously it's in good condition and it's a good body score. If it folds over and kind of crinkles more, obviously it's less fat and a lower body score. So, and then we would take a genetic sample from their hind foot webbing. That was for my landscape genetic analysis. We would microchip it to give it an identification, so just like a cat and dog between the shoulder blades. Take some other measurements of their bill and things like that and then send it on their way again. So and then we do that probably 4 or 5 times throughout the night trying to capture these platypuses. And then we would pack up once morning came. So
because they're nocturnal, that's why.
Yes, they're nocturnal, so they're out most of the time at night time.
Yeah, okay, sweet. And with this bycatch, what's a cool piece of what is a memorable bycatch that you've had? Something unique, if there is something.
Bull route. So they're a venomous fish.
For sure.
Yeah, so they're kind of down in the lower reaches of our creeks here in Brisbane. So they're in the Brisbane River. And in the lower sections of these creeks are these bull route. They're super beautiful, fancy fish. And they don't come out of the nets easy because they'll put their fins up and spike.
Yeah.
But beautiful, like incredible. And obviously you have to kind of get pliers out to get them because obviously you don't want to get stung as well.
I want to get stung.
No, I
don't.
So they were really beautiful to kind of get those, and they kind of grunt at you when you're trying to get them out. They're kind of like,
I have not heard the grunting yet. I used to keep them, but I've never heard the grunting.
Yeah, well, obviously they weren't happy with me pulling on them with pliers.
Valid.
So fair enough for the grunting. But yeah, so they were beautiful, but we would get like your long-finned eels. Unfortunately, I never caught a lungfish in the South Pine.
Cool.
That would have been incredible.
For sure.
Unfortunately, I wasn't lucky enough to capture one of those. But turtles, other little fish species, gudgeons and things like that would be our most common that we just release throughout.
For sure. Okay. Now, there's a lot of platypus information. Why should, kind of twofold, why should the public care about what is happening to platypus and their environment? And secondly, why do you care? And why does it matter to you?
Yep.
Why should the public
I
think it's important?
Well, just in general, freshwater ecosystems are the lifeblood of our whole world, aren't they? So the platypus, I guess we use as very much this flagship species to advocate for freshwater ecosystems and the importance of their conservation. And so by protecting the platypus and their habitat, you're protecting all these other species as well as water and, kind of the abiotic things in that environment. And so having people connect with something, I would hope, brings a broader sense of connection for just freshwater ecosystems in general. And, trying to get people to care. So if they can connect with platypus and they can care and they can act and take action upon that to do what they can for their local waterways, 100%. I'm a big advocate for that in the community.
Yeah.
Our local catchment groups cannot say enough for them in how much they, support our local waterways, and they do plantings and cleanups and everything. They really do so much. And to get people on board to join their local catchment groups and help support their local catchment groups, that's just one little thing that they can do for the importance of
the platypus
and in general
the ecosystem.
Yes.
Why are freshwater ecosystems so valuable as a whole? Just a couple of pointers on that. Water
itself, like everything has to survive with water, doesn't it? We survive with water. So if we don't have healthy, clean water, it's a bit dire, isn't it? And so, you can just look, if you look hard enough across even just our urban landscape, obviously some waterways are looking better than others. And so, and so much thrive within these ecosystems. And we want to get into the broader picture of things. Biodiversity is the key. We know that the increase of biodiversity and the health of that biodiversity means a resilient ecosystem.
Okay.
And so, protecting that then has that flow-on effect to ultimately us. I think we've lost that connect to the bigger picture and how we fit into that bigger picture.
Okay.
And so, again, just trying to use, something as amazing as the platypus for people to reconnect to that and understand that, we can do our bit to help support and protect those areas. And for me, the platypus was never the ultimate goal. I was lucky enough to get on board on a volunteer trip down in Victoria
Grampians, was it?
Yes, the Grampians National Park.
Yeah.
So in Mackenzie River. And
so initially not your thing.
No,
that wasn't the goal.
No,
okay, but now we're into this Grampian spot. Okay, yeah.
And so I jumped on board this volunteer expedition, 3 days in the Grampians. This is my old stomping ground, really, in that kind of northwest area of Victoria. So I was living in Mackay at the time, and I flew down to Melbourne and went out with the ecologist and learnt all this stuff about platypus and obviously, the threats and how they research them and do all this and came back to Queensland thinking, that's, incredible. What are we doing? Like, surely we're doing something here in Queensland.
Right.
And we really weren't.
Nothing.
Compared to Victoria and New South Wales that have 30, 40 plus years of ongoing
research. Yeah.
We here in Queensland we've got some great research, but it's not ongoing. It's not continuous. We're not monitoring populations.
Sporadic.
Yeah, very sporadic. And we're a big state. We're lucky enough to have platypus, obviously from the border out west to the most western population out at Carnarvon Gorge and right through to Cooktown in the north.
Wow.
So, it's a massive distribution and to cover that area, to monitor them. And so I came back going, well, this is it. This is where I feel I need to try to raise the profile of the conservation for platypus.
And how did you come to that decision? What drove you? What was there a moment that you were like, this is why? Yeah,
well, I guess it came back to the volunteering in the Grampians. We caught 3 platypuses and, being up close and personal and learning so much about them. And I was just like, this is incredible. Like, this is a species, again, that not a lot of people get up close and personal with. So I know I was very privileged, and I am still very privileged to do that. And so knowing that they weren't having that advocacy here in Queensland on a bigger scale, I was just like, it's kind of scary because we're not keeping tabs on them. And unfortunately, with the research that I have done because of pursuing honours and PhD, we have lost platypus in the last 20 years around Brisbane. And that's just a blip in terms of a species. And
is it a large amount, or it's gradual? It's noticeable, but not in the grand scheme of things, or?
Well, it's definitely noticeable. But again, because we hadn't been monitoring them
historically,
and, really rigorously and, building up that data, they really just disappeared right under our noses, didn't they?
Yep.
And now we're like, oh, hang on a second.
Now we got to do something.
Yeah.
Right.
But they're still not listed as a threatened species.
No.
On our National Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Act.
Which is interesting. Is it vulnerable?
No.
Or is it just non-threatened, threatened?
It's just least concern.
Oh, really? Least concern? That's crazy.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Because if I found a platypus, I'd be like, hey,
that's right.
I ain't seen you. I ain't seen you
for
a long time. What are you doing here?
Exactly. And that's the thing. That's the scary part, is that, to get that really important monitoring data, we need, unfortunately, the financial backing to do so. But to get that financial backing, it only seems to come with threatened species. But how can you then get the data to prove that it's a threatened species?
It's kind of like a loop.
Yeah,
of silliness.
It is very silly. So it's been really frustrating, but we're lucky to have obviously an incredible community that has supported us to be able to get on board and do some amazing research. And obviously I was lucky enough to get in and do my PhD and try to, build up a bit of a story. And, we're slowly but surely building up support from local councils and other groups to be able to do that. And so, but it's slowly but surely, when unfortunately the resourcing just isn't there.
Isn't quite enough.
Yeah.
Right. And again, it's because of that loop, because you need the funding to get the research, but you need the research to get the funding.
Yeah.
And okay, right. And there's also grants for like community grants or something that can be won to help towards that. How is a grant of that sort of genre won? How do you win that sort of grant?
Well, it depends on the grant and obviously the amount as well. So a lot of the grants that I go for our research is for the environmental DNA sampling, because analysis in itself costs quite a lot.
Right.
And so you're looking at a few $1,000s, like the more the better when it comes to that, because obviously the more money you have, the more samples you have, which means the more sites you can take samples and analyze for the presence of platypus.
Yep.
So you're getting that kind of distribution information. It won't, unfortunately, tell you individual numbers.
How many there are?
No.
It just says that there is at least one or enough to get a
detection of the DNA.
For sure.
Yes.
Yep.
And so when it comes to these grants, like, we'll go for small grants, like community grants, to support, local projects, especially with catchment groups and things like that. They're really great. Citizen science is a, brilliant thing to jump on board with. And people in those communities are really keen to do that. So that keeps the cost down, because I guess, there's not that labor involved of, getting contractors in or anything like that. You can get the community to be supporting that. But then the analysis is still the expensive part. So you still want to make sure you've got funding for that. So grants can range from a couple of thousand through to 50,000 or even more. But the bigger threatened species grants,
get those.
They're the big,
the big money.
The big money.
The big plays.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And that you can do a lot with that in terms of, the bigger impact with those kind of grants. So
with citizen science, if there is someone who has an interest, passion, desire to work with platypus, would citizen science be a valid way to kind of get experience working with platypus as a way for a career path? Would that be a valid starting point?
So citizen science for platypus monitoring is really the observational surveys or the eDNA sampling stuff. If they're wanting to delve really into more of the rigorous trapping and tagging and research, you would need to certainly more so volunteer as such on specific projects for that. So seek out these groups that are actually doing that. So like Platypus Conservation Initiative from New South Wales or Caesar Australia down in Victoria. Get into those groups and get on board with their, expeditions that are going out and doing that. So you get that hands-on experience.
Yeah.
For, the bulk, bringing citizen science in to do, monitoring, the observational surveys are brilliant, and the eDNA components as well.
And do you need a degree or any sort of experience to participate in that?
No.
Sweet.
No, it's as easy as just understanding what you're looking for or the process of what you're doing. A lot of these surveys have a component of like an induction or a demonstration.
Yeah.
So you get shown what you need to do. So it's easy. So anyone can do it.
Great.
To jump on board and support those.
Yeah, that's a great. Okay, that sounds like a fantastic opportunity for someone who wants to get into it. Okay, so through citizen science, there was a couple of things you said a little bit ago. One being with the historical data of platypus. I remember reading or hearing something like that. They used to be in plague proportions almost. Like, what's that? What's that history of the platypus from what we know of until now?
Yeah, so Dr. Tamielle Brunt, she did her PhD in New South Wales, and she did a lot of that, like delving into the deep history of platypus and looking into just historical, even news records and how people described platypus populations like prolific and like seeing like over 15 to 20 platypuses in, the Yarra River in Melbourne. Today it's not a species we would describe as prolific.
No.
You're lucky to see maybe 2 platypuses, 3 platypuses at a time on the surface.
Wow.
I've seen that at Yungala National Park. It's not something how we would describe them. So historically they were prolific, but they did get then hunted before they were protected back in 1902.
So it was part of the fur trade?
That's right.
Right.
So, these shooters or hunters would go out and just massacre hundreds or thousands of platypuses. And again, the dent on the populations back then and how well they've recovered now, we still, it's very hard to tell. So the IUCN, International Union for Conservation and Nature, Red List, and obviously they put together a lot of the, current research and everything. They estimate populations could be as little as 30,000 or up to 300,000. So that's a huge,
a huge scale.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's the thing. We don't know because they are such a hard species to get a handle of their numbers. And even with the amount of research that's been happening in Victoria and New South Wales, even they've got a handle on a lot of the local populations, but still in terms of the national scale, it's hard to put a figure on them. So it's really difficult
to really find that number, right?
Yeah.
Now you've got this. Okay, well, I'd like to move into hear a bit more of your story and how Tamielle Brunt now working with Platypus got to working with Platypus. What was your what was your childhood like? Were you jumping in the water? Were you always water based? Were you tree based? What's kind of history on that?
Yeah, I grew up on a small hobby farm in northwest Victoria. It was open plains, dry land farming.
Mm-hmm.
Like we did have a creek not far from us, but we would just jump in our muddy dam. That was kind of as close as the water as we got in that sense. But I was lucky to grow up, I think, on the land and get that sense of appreciation and connection right early on. We had dogs and cats and guinea pigs and, cattle and sheep and, all of the things around us. We'd have the native wildlife coming in as well. We were lucky to see and experience that, firsthand growing up. And I think this is the progression because I'm seeing it with my niece right now.
Okay.
Seems to be the progression maybe with younger girls. It could be anyone, younger boys, anyone, but there's this affiliation or fascination with marine science. And then you're like, oh, but then there's vet science and then you progress through. And I kind of did the same thing. And
interesting.
I thought, I want to be a marine scientist, even though I live in the bush and I don't go to the beach, but hey, whatever. So I had this fascination and then I was like, oh no, maybe I'll be a vet. And then I got working at my local country vet during school holidays.
How old were you now?
This would have been like late primary school, early high school.
Okay.
So in school holidays, going in and helping out and stuff like that.
Wow.
And then I was like, oh, no, I don't want to work with domestic animals. Like I love them, but I don't want to be working in this space. And so that's when I kind of went, well, what are the opportunities with wildlife or, what else is there? I guess I was also very fortunate that I was supported by my parents to be able to go off and do work experience in different areas. So
right on. Okay, so your parents were a big part of that, so they supported you.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, and how did that feel being a younger lass?
Well, as a kid, you take them for granted, don't you? At the time, you just go, well, that's great. My parents are doing this. But now, obviously, you look back and go, wow, like that was a lot. Because a lot of people don't have those opportunities when they're growing up. And so you can look back and be really grateful and appreciative of that, knowing that you were able to take those opportunities. So for my mum to run around after me and take me into the Adelaide Hills to do work experience at, Warrawong Sanctuary.
Yeah, wow.
And, there was platypus there, but, I loved them and everything, but it wasn't obviously that affiliation that led me here today.
Yeah.
But just in general, building up that love of wildlife and everything. And then through school, we were lucky enough to do the work placement. Again, I went to Monarto Zoological Park out in South Australia. And then
Monarto Zoological Park. All right. And that was for work experience?
That was for work experience.
And how old were you at this point?
Would have been, I'm just thinking maybe I've skipped a few years, but I probably that could have been when I was doing work experience as part of my TAFE course. Okay. So that would have been after high school.
Okay.
And so, to jump on board those kind of experiences and again, be supported as a young young woman driving around and doing these things. It was brilliant. And my TAFE course alone, I did the Diploma of Conservation and Land Management in Mildura, and that was such a hands-on experience. Everything that we learned, it was such a combination of things, from plant identification through to learning how to repair fencing, like a lot of kind of farming and conservation meshed into one, which was quite incredible.
Right.
And that was my first experience getting involved in biodiversity surveying across the Mallee Sunset National Park.
Yep.
That was ultimately where I was going. I went, and we were lucky enough to get on board on this biodiversity survey, and, going out, putting the pitfalls in, getting up at, early morning, looking in these, pitfalls for, little pygmy possums and all the little reptiles and like dunnarts and all these incredible things. And this is, red open plains of Spinifex country and Mallee country.
This is like early 20s about then?
Yeah. And, that was pretty incredible to be able to do that. And I was like, yep, that's where I was going. I then delved into looking at where I could do this. And it was, ultimately where I wanted to go. And so it's then, I guess, I moved from Victoria and I moved to Queensland.
When was that?
Brisbane. That was early, maybe 20s, like 22, 23.
Okay.
I think.
So you moved state with 23-ish, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And
for the purpose of?
Well, moving at the time, I was meant to go to Mackay. That's where my mum was moving at the time. And then my partner lived in Brisbane at the time. So I just kind of ended up residing in Brisbane. So, but then that allowed me to go back to study. And I hit university doing wildlife science out at Gatton. And
good old Gatton.
Yeah. And so that then, kind of spurred me on to continue further research. And I never thought I would be in the university space.
Okay.
I always thought I'd be more the hands-on industry, getting into it straight away. But no, my love of learning kind of
took over.
Yeah, and I did that external part-time, so it took me a lot longer to finish my undergrad. And then again, during that time, because with university you get to do placement and things like that.
Yeah.
And I went back to my roots, back down to Mildura, and I did about 4 weeks at Australian Wildlife Conservancy Sanctuary at Scotia, which is about maybe halfway between Mildura and Broken Hill. So again, outback, red open dunes, Spinifex country, Mallee country, all that.
Back to it, yeah.
Loved it. That's where I was going to be. I was hell-bent on working for Australian Wildlife Conservancy. And, we were out doing the biodiversity survey. We were doing numbat surveys.
I've never seen numbat.
Incredible. Just all these amazing things. And
amazing experiences, yeah.
They had bilbies, and I was like, yep, this is me. This is where I'm coming.
I'm in the sticks, all right.
This is where I'm coming back to. And but no, as fate would have it, because again, experience, being able to get on board these volunteer experiences, I volunteered with platypuses, and then that took me on a whole different trajectory.
Yeah.
So, and so here we are today with, platypus from 2014 when I first went and did the volunteer for platypus there, and then, developed my honours program in 2015, and then continued to do my PhD work. So
right. With this entire sort of journey, is there one or two moments that specifically stand out to you that were somewhat of a fork in a road, or that you can see your life changed in such a way? Is there any that come to mind for you?
Well, definitely the biodiversity surveying part of when I was doing my TAFE course, that was definitely a hard road that I thought I would take. And then like life does just twist and turn, and I guess you do what you have to do at the time. Like you have to make a living and get jobs and all that kind of stuff. And then obviously moving to Brisbane was certainly then a change of course.
Shake up, yeah.
Because obviously I wasn't in Mildura anymore or in that area where I wanted to be working. And then definitely, to have something change in me again when I volunteered with Platypus, to then, I guess, come back and then have that support to do what I wanted to do. A lot of people probably would just be like, oh, well, there's no program here, so move on to another thing. But I was like, well, there's no program, so what am I going to do about it?
Yeah, awesome. Seeing a problem and finding a solution instead of just complaining. Fantastic.
Yeah, so I guess I was like, well, this is it. Like, if no one's doing anything about platypuses, I guess I better do something about it. So then that was obviously very much so. And then who knows what the next trajectory might be. I don't know if I'll be in platypuses for the next few years or something else will come along. You just never know.
Yeah. And if someone is what opportunities would you give someone if they came to you? Say someone is looking for working with platypus, passionate about it. Is there an opportunity that you would consider giving, in theory, to someone who comes to you, being like, "Hey, look, I love platypus. I see there's a problem, and I want to be part of the solution." Is there kind of where I'm looking at it from is someone people who don't know what to do. They don't know where they're going. They're looking for opportunity. Is there still opportunity in just going and asking someone? It's like the idea of resumes. There's still value handing in a physical resume instead of just doing it online. Is there still possibilities to be found in reaching out to someone such as yourself?
Yeah, definitely. I think you have to just put yourself out there and experience anything that sparks your interest, even if it may not be your ultimate passion yet, because I didn't think platypus would be.
Yeah.
I think if you have the opportunity to get out there and experience anything and everything, you just never know what you might find. But also along the way, you gain skills and connections and networking that is really important, and you never know where that leads you either. And so I have some amazing people that have come to me and said, I'm super keen on platypuses. What can we do? Obviously, one of our longest running projects is the environmental DNA sampling. I'm unfortunately not trapping platypuses at the moment. We don't have a program with that. That was just my platypus research for my PhD. But obviously, there's still those opportunities with like the Platypus Conservation Initiative. So getting onto them, and they're out trapping and tagging and doing a lot of population hands-on stuff if that's the way you want to go and experience that. But you just ask and you never know. And if there's not that opportunity, most people will say, oh, but hey, here's this person's contact. Give them a call. And see what they have available. And that's majority of what I would do. If people are wanting more hands-on, I'd send them through to the Platypus Conservation Initiative or Caesar Australia if they're able to get on board with their volunteering to experience that. Otherwise, they're more than happy to jump on board with me if they want to go around, do some water sampling and some observational surveys or stuff like that. But also if they've just got the drive to just take it upon themselves to develop a program or something, then, happy to support or work with them to get that support. Because ultimately that's what I did. Like I had to just get the support and then wing it and see how it went. So it's, you just never know. And you've just got to ask. So,
And so as simple as you just got to ask if someone is asking, for the best response, best outcome, how would you suggest going about an interaction like that?
I think
don't
everyone's...
be like, excuse me, can you please? Or you'd be like, hey, I would like to do like.
We don't bite. No, we don't spur you.
You
That's
don't?
fine.
Okay, that's good.
I think ecologists in general, we just love that there's we're trying to ignite next generations to get on board and do whatever.
Get that fire burning.
Yeah. So if you're keen, we're super happy that you've come to us. We're just like, you don't have to be super formal and be like, dear Dr. Brunt, I am such and such from, like, just go, hey, Tam, I've seen your work. I really want to get involved.
Yeah.
It'd be great to catch up, or if you've got time, or
being considerate also of where you are.
Certainly be considerate and I guess maybe slightly formal, but, we're all pretty cruisy people and we all want the same outcome. Cool. So I think just reaching out and asking the question, if I can't help you, I will most likely know someone who can. And it just chain reaction through that to find the person that is best suited to you. I'm not going to lie and say, yeah, I'm the best person. It's, that's not how it works. There are other people and you might be able to direct, or other people might be able to direct you and vice versa and all that jazz. Exactly.
Now, with platypus ecology and the plight of the platypus, where do you see it going? Where do you see what would you class success as for platypus?
Well, again, Victoria and New South Wales are kicking big goals. They've got a lot going on. They've got a lot of money going on. You've got Taronga Sanctuary that have just built an $8 million rehab centre out at Dubbo.
Wow.
So, and they've got, again, the resourcing and the finances backing them to do a lot in that space. Same in Victoria. Conservation efforts in Victoria are pretty incredible. Unfortunately, here in Queensland, we're very much lagging behind. And again, it comes down to that resourcing cycle. And that cycle of finance and stuff. In a perfect world, if I had all the resources and all the finances and everything, I would do a full statewide eDNA census of platypuses, because the last census was back in 2000. So we're very much overdue for it. And now that we have eDNA technology, it's even better than what was available in 2000.
Oh, for sure.
That was observational surveys and people just emailing in and sending in observations.
VHS tapes back then.
Exactly. So, we've come such a long way in just the last 24 years, but that information would be super important. And then really delving into, because again, we've got some incredible modelling that will feed into policy and management, and that's what the government likes to see when it comes to potentially giving funding and things like that. But again, if we didn't need to worry about funding, you could just go all in and you could start, getting that really important information about distribution and monitoring, and then delving into potentially those vulnerable populations to understand the genetics and potentially if there's issues with genetic integrity of those populations, if they're highly isolated, and if they, if they need help. We need to certainly have those conversations about how we will be saving populations when they are highly isolated. Again, New South Wales.
Better.
We've had the success of the Royal Sydney National Park reintroduction. They've just had a baby platypus into that system. So 10 platypuses got re-released there.
Yep.
And this season they had a baby platypus.
Oy.
So, is relocation a thing? Is moving platypuses from one catchment to another a thing? What is the genetic rescue going to look like? Because obviously we can't, in some areas, we can't just leave
a couple of platypus hanging out.
Well, we can't leave well enough alone because we've done so much damage already and platypuses need help. And so what does that look like? So really opening up a lot of that conversation and understanding where those areas are. Obviously Brisbane being, southeast Queensland, I should say, because it's the most highly urbanised area in Queensland.
Okay.
But then we've got potentially other vulnerable populations. So in central Queensland, in the Fitzroy Basin, the Dawson River, it is heavily weird, as in the barriers, the barriers of weirs. And a lot of them don't even have fish barriers or anything like that. And so we know, again, from the research from New South Wales, that the genetic barrier to platypus populations with those kind of things And again, we're not doing any work out in central Queensland to understand those issues and how well those populations are going.
Well, how about with this Queensland, New South Wales, all of Australia, everywhere that platypus exists, because they're not in Western Australia, are they?
No.
Sweet, just the east coast of Australia, Tasmania. For people that might want to do something, or even those that don't want to do something, like I can sympathise with people who don't really know wildlife.
Mm-hmm.
They hear people that care about wildlife and they're like, I don't need to care about how much I spend in the shower. I don't care. It doesn't matter. It's not going to affect me.
Mm-hmm.
What is one thing that people can do to have an impact, however small it may be, and why does that have an impact?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this was kind of my TED talk.
Which we'll get into afterwards. As well.
But I talk about those small cumulative actions. And so, again, things that you wouldn't think too much of. So, when we are going through drought, reducing your shower by 1 minute to save litres of water throughout the week. And obviously sharing that water with wildlife and keeping it in those systems to make sure that, there's refuge pools for platypuses because, again, they highly depend upon water. And so if their waterways are drying up and those refuge pools are shrinking and becoming quite shallow, they're going to be forced out over land. They risk predation. They risk exhaustion because they don't do so well walking over land. And so sharing those resources and the little things that we can do to help that. And not just for platypuses, again, just for the health of a waterway.
The entire freshwater ecosystem. Yeah.
And then just in general, like I said, joining your catchment groups is such a great way to get on board with your local community. It's such a fun and easily satisfying, Saturday morning, going down and doing a bit of bush care to support the local vegetation.
I mean, that would work, I think, for people that care.
Yeah.
For someone who might not care, what is the strongest evidence or point that you would give someone to help change their mind with the goal of changing their mind?
Well, that's a psychology degree. This is the thing. To me, it just seems like a no-brainer, I guess, because I've innately cared for so long.
Right.
I don't know what
you're
to
not
change
too sure
someone.
how. Yeah.
You have to clearly link it to their values.
Yeah.
So what is of value to them? Is it money? Is it, I don't know.
Property, space.
Yeah.
Yeah. Personal gain. Yeah.
So you have to obviously find out what drives them and then work it in how it threatens them. So, but then still I don't know, maybe I've become a bit of a pessimist in some areas, but it's even harder to then, because a lot of people do just go, oh, well, it's not my problem. Like, whatever, I'm not going to be around. But we're already seeing changes, and I honestly don't know how to connect to those people who don't intrinsically have that connection.
Yeah.
And okay, so if the water example, if they don't have water, like what is it for them that would scare them into caring? Like, is it a selfish reason? Like if they don't have their water, they can't have their long showers and I don't know.
Not sure.
It's hard.
It's hard.
I don't know what the answer is. I try to, through what I do, I feel education is really important. But one thing I do say is it's hard to, because a lot of people who come to my like community presentations and everything, they are interested at some point. They're already
disinterested because they're there.
They're there.
Yeah.
They're already converted. It's trying to get out to those people that you're talking about. How do you find those people, or how do you even connect with those people in the first place?
And I would say, I guess, the best method that you've come to is with what your TED Talk was, what it was on about, what it was on and about, which is cute aggression. what was that experience like? I guess I'd like to know with being a TED Talk. How did they reach out to you? You reach out to them. How was it speaking in front of a crowd of people on a red dot? And what is this cute aggression? Just quickly on that as well.
Yeah.
What was it like? What was the experience like?
Well, it's definitely nerve-wracking because it's very strategic.
Yes.
I love talking to the community, but it's all very relaxed and you just waffle on because I'm good at waffling on. Yeah. But a TED Talk is succinct, timed,
right.
Key messaging that you need to be really good at. And I guess I wanted to make it a fun kind of aspect of that call to action, because we are in a world where we're overwhelmed with a lot going on.
A lot of information
and a lot of despair. Eco-anxiety is a big thing, climate crisis, like all of that, people get really overwhelmed. But just literally breaking it down and reminding people we have got some incredible things that live right in our backyard. And channeling the cute aggression towards those things to take action.
And what is cute aggression?
So it's that overwhelming emotion that you want to squeeze the crap out of something that is so cute. So
like a baby.
Well, not me, baby, but like
some babies.
Or a platypus or like in my TED Talk, I say, grandmas love to squeeze the chubby cheeks of babies. Like that's a cute aggression, but
so I hear. I've never been one, so I don't know, but I hear.
Yeah. And so trying to get people to see the cuteness in a lot of things, and a lot of the images and, the conservation photographers that were so generous in allowing me to use their images for the TED Talk were just like, they were beautiful. And I guess just trying to showcase to people that these are the incredible things. Connect with something. Get ridiculously overwhelmed by cute aggression for this something and then take just one action to try and help that. So a very, very simplistic concept really, because I didn't want it to be the doom and gloom of we're not doing enough and it's, all of that stuff. It's like, no, collectively, if we all just got on board and did that one little thing, I'm a big advocate for the ripple effect and how collectively we can build and make a difference in our communities, no matter how small it could be.
With a couple of things in my mind, but first I want to step back to your how did you go about garnering your confidence enough to speak in front of, I think it was about 500 people at your TEDx talk? Were you always a confident speaker?
No.
Very not confident. What was going on there?
Yeah, so I really had to push through the barrier, but I guess I've built up my public speaking skills a lot in the platypus space. You have to get good at science communication. Again, if you're wanting to educate people, you have to talk to them. I think I've always been pretty good at just talking to people. But yeah, talking in front of a crowd is a different experience. But different crowds are also very different. So
you feel,
yeah, like if you talk in front of a bunch of academics is very different to your local community. Like,
yeah, for sure.
And so there's certainly different levels of confidence or nervous energy with the different people. But I really pushed myself out of my comfort zone when I applied for the TEDx talk at
Okay, so you
St.
apply
Lucia.
for that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay,
so
cool. You're
TEDx,
like, I'm going to speak in front of people. I might be scared, but I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So TEDx UQ, every year they set out, they will send out an application and an expression of interest. And so I just went, well, let's just throw this random idea. Okay. And they were like, tell us more. I'm like, okay. And you go for an interview.
Well, okay.
Like it's all very, they have to know you're serious and you're committed, and they go through the process because they work with you to develop your script and they train you. They get in a speaking coach.
Really?
They go all out.
Do you pay for this, or is this?
No, it's all through TEDx.
Wow.
And so they really work with you to achieve your goal in the messaging. So really making sure that you've got that clear message and a clear talk
clear
and everything.
goal. Yeah. Wow.
And I pushed myself out of my boundaries because I'm like, you know what? Because as I just said, I'm always talking to people that are already converted. How do I get beyond those people?
Yeah.
500 random people from a TEDx talk? Okay.
That could do it.
That'll try to do it. So that was kind of my motivation, was just trying to find different avenues to get out, the importance of conservation and a different spin on it as well. So, it was nerve-wracking. Like, I did stuff up. I don't think you can tell, maybe, if you
only very slightly if you really looked at it.
If you want to,
maybe.
like, I can't watch.
I think you did pretty good.
I can't watch myself back.
You can't
find myself.
Well, I think you did pretty good. Yeah, you pushed yourself out of the comfort zone, and you transferred the information fairly well. You had pauses. You didn't go, or sorry, I didn't mean to do that. You just went with it. So yeah, you did it right. But it was an uncomfortable, awkward experience for yourself.
No,
to some extent.
It's just, of course, it's nerve-wracking speaking in such a big kind of formal
on a dot.
Yeah, on the red dot.
Can you move? You can't move outside that dot. That's what I heard.
No,
okay,
and
sweet.
you couldn't really step back, so you kind of just had to wiggle on the spot.
Right. Okay. So you can't. Can you walk in within that, or you can't?
I don't.
Even walk within
not
that?
if you're just doing a talk.
Okay.
Obviously, there were other speakers that were a bit more creative and did have a bit more
articulation, body language. Yeah.
The stage. So it really, I think they just work with you to make sure that it's all about. Yeah, the mics and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, cool. Interesting. I've always wondered, but that's very cool. That's very cool. Look, as we kind of land this platypus conversation, I want, is there any experiences that you've had with wildlife that really kind of brought joy, reinvigorated you, or made you rethink whether you should be working with a platypus or this other species and this other species instead? Have you had any experiences like that where you're just like, wow, that was a beautiful moment?
I think being that person who's always loved being in the bush and the environment, you kind of find the awe in a lot of things and small things that, and it excites you just being up close and personal with really cool wildlife. But I think one thing, because again, I even though I thought about it when I was younger, was the whole marine science. And I don't think I'm an ocean person, but I do find it very captivating, like snorkeling in the ocean and like coral reef snorkeling and all that kind of stuff. And when you're even just snorkeling and you can't hear anything around you in the water, but you can hear like the parrotfish like chewing on the coral and all this kind of stuff, and you're just watching, this incredible underwater world, that just blows my mind again, because obviously I'm very much, terrestrial or, aquatic, like freshwater ecology kind of thing, but the marine science or just the marine ecosystems, again, just blows my mind. And it's just really incredible to see underwater. And then I nearly smacked into a stingray. Like, it was huge and it scared the absolute crap out of me. But, your heart's in your mouth and you're just like, oh, my God, like, just those kind of things. And you just think, wow, like, and then it shimmied itself into the sand to camouflage it. And I was just kind of lingering over the top of it going, holy crap. Like,
I know I got this didn't end well.
And so it's just, I guess because it's such a flip side to what I do and what my work is here on the land. So that's pretty special. But then, just having like-minded people around you, but also seeing the joy of people experiencing it for themselves the first time. Yeah. So some of my volunteers that would come on, trapping for platypuses, and I really I had low capture rates. A lot of the time I was going out and I wasn't capturing platypus. It was just turtles, eels, fish. But when we did capture platypus and the volunteers that I had with me, just their overwhelm,
Mm.
being like, this is a platypus, like right here in front of me, this is a platypus. And that's, that's pretty special. And then they go on and talk about it and they're so excited. And that kind of is like, oh yeah, it gives you that kind of sense of, it's incredible. And yes, this is really important work and lucky to do this and then share that kind of experience. But yeah, I don't think there's any other
kind of stand out.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
The pygmy possums on my first biodiversity survey, like that was pretty incredible. These tiny little, with their little big ears and like so ridiculous. Like again, cute aggression. Just don't squish them in your hand.
For sure.
And just those kind of moments. Again, these little things that you don't expect to find and then you do. And like knob-tailed geckos, they are awesome. Like they are such a cool thing. And they were everywhere at Scotia Sanctuary. We were capturing them all the time in the pitfalls and stuff. And they're just the coolest. Like, so yeah, just
getting out there and experiencing it is what you've really loved.
Yeah. You just find the joy in all of it, I think.
Yeah, awesome.
And I think when you don't find the joy, then, that's
an indicator that maybe you need to do something else.
Yeah.
Okay. With a final point, for someone looking to get into wildlife, what sort of direction would you give? Where would they go? Who might they speak to? What books or academia should they read? What is a starting point that you would suggest to someone who is looking for an opportunity?
I think I say this all the time is if you have the capability to get out and volunteer where you can.
Okay.
Getting that hands-on experience to understand what you do and don't like. Like what do you want to do? What don't you want to do? And even if it is as simple as joining your local catchment group, because that alone, the skills that you can get locally from your bush care coordinators, incredible.
Wow.
Local plant ID, weed ID,
for sure,
animal ID. Like there's a lot that even just our local catchment groups can offer us in terms of upskilling. But if you do have the opportunity to get on board and experience broader surveys, so Australian Wildlife Conservancy, Bush Heritage, any of those places, you don't know what you do and don't like if you're not going to get out there and experience it. If you can do that, I cannot, rave on about it enough.
Yeah.
And it's certainly really something that I will always try to recommend to people because I just know how much it has helped me find my way and navigate my way. And it may change and it has changed, but you don't know until you know or don't know, what you do and don't like. So, but also just put feelers out. So look for local organisations. So I obviously work with Wildlife Queensland. I also work with Oxley Creek Catchment Association. So I've got the best of both worlds in that space. But if there's any other organisations that are of interest to you, reach out, see what opportunities they may have. And, academia isn't for everyone. Gosh, I never thought I'd be in academia. It's not. It's definitely not the path that I thought I would have ever taken. And I only took it because it supported me to do what I needed to do for the platypus research. If I could have done that without doing a PhD, I probably would have because it's hard and it's laborious. But I think, you can look into, I loved the TAFE course, Conservation and Land Management. If people want just an all-round bit of a, dipping their toes into different things, I found that course brilliant. And that's a TAFE course. I think you can do a certificate or diploma. But for me, and I don't know if it's changed because obviously it's been a few years now and it was in a different institute. So I don't know what it's like here in Queensland, but it was very hands-on. It was very broad, but it gave you the understanding of what you did like and what you wouldn't want to do. So I really loved that. And it was a lot of hands-on learning, and I love that instead of just full textbook stuff. So getting out there and doing that and putting into kind of real world practice was really good. So, but yeah, just ask, like, just reach out. You might get ghosted. It's okay. Find someone else. Like, just keep asking. You'll find someone who's willing to, guide you in that right direction.
Yeah.
You don't know until you ask. And if it's a no, it's not the end of the world.
No.
Just go on, ask someone else. So
absolutely. You won't know if you don't ask. Fantastic. Hey, look, thank you so much for this last little bit of words of wisdom in the entire conversation. It's been a blast hearing a little bit about platypus from a professional such as yourself, and the wisdom and the guidance that you've given other people and the listeners. It's appreciated. Thank you for your time. And if someone wants to reach out to you, what platforms are you on to do so?
Yes. So I'm platypus_protector on Instagram, or you can email me at Wildlife Queensland, and it's platypus@wildlife.org.au.
Fantastic. Okay, and I'll also have those details down in the description as well. But yeah, thank you for your time. Thank you for watching or listening to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to find more information on today's guest or more information on the podcast, you can find those details in the description below. Otherwise, I hope and look forward to seeing you in the next one.